Hello and welcome to Tip Off. Before we get started, I'm going to have Niall choose our highlight. Niall, give me a month. April, December, February, January, March, November, October,
January.
January. It's the random highlight selection. You can see these games on the screen, I believe. Pick one of them.
125-14, the Wizards.
All right. And you can see the highlights on the screen. Tell me which one you want.
Cantor putback.
All
17.
right. Here we go. The show is underway. Thank you, Niall. Alex slides in for the rebound. It's loose. Who's got it? Ennis does. He scoops it to the rim and he scores. Ennis Cantor. Well, it wasn't so bad. Might not have been brilliant. Sounded like an exciting game. We're a week away from Media Day. All the guys are in town. NBA season feels like it's close to starting. It's off on a Monday. Pow! How are you? Thanks to Niall for the help on that, and thanks to all of you for tuning in, whether it's morning, evening, night, whenever it might be that you've tuned into this tip-off, or if you're catching it live this morning. Thank you very much. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and a week from today is Media Day. I'll head down to Open Gym today, and I believe every single guy is in town already. So I think from the standpoint of the Jazz players, training camp is actually underway. It's all voluntary, but I think it's in their minds a little bit underway. I think this team is rolling at this point and ready to go, and we'll see. It's going to be an exciting, fun year playing new basketball. Here's what we've got for the show today. Dennis Lindsay had some really interesting comments on 1280 The Zone and 97.5 FM. Spence and Gordon always do such a good job of that. NBA rank continues to come in. We'll touch on that. ESPN put up some fantasy projections that I want to thank listener. I don't have any more on my timeline. Somebody threw it at me, and I appreciate them mentioning that to me. Plus, a bunch of NBA news in this really weird Phoenix Suns, Minnesota Timberwolves Eric Bledsoe story that doesn't line up at all, which means there's something funky going on. Plus, a Hall of Fame NBA player working with someone that seems most unlikely. All of those things coming up on today's edition of Tip Off. So thanks very much for tuning in. Remember, the Jazz mini plans are available. My favorite is the You Pick'em 7-pack. Find the 7 games that you want to pick and get to them. All right, so NBA rank continues, and I've made yet another mistake in my guesses of NBA rank. If you're not a daily listener to this, ESPN is putting out their top 500 players, and I decided to guess and see what order the Jazz players would come in. They started with Jack Cooley, followed by Ian Clark, then Carrick Felix and Toure Murray. I would have had Carrick Felix ahead of that. I kind of think the Jazz do have Carrick Felix ahead of Toure Murray. I could be wrong as time goes on. We'll see through training. Probably don't have him definite, so it could change during training camp. Then I thought Jeremy Evans would be next, but instead it was Rodney Hood came in at 377. Jeremy Evans came in at 328. Steve Novak 326. And then I thought that Exum's international performance, Gobert's international performance, but this may have been done. Someone told me the picks were made in early September, so this was prior to Gobert's performance. So Gobert just came in at 311 overall on this. And maybe the most telling one was that Richard Jefferson came in at 315 and was 306. So we started Richard Jefferson for 82 games last year, and the impression that the people at NBA Rank have is that he got less good than they thought he was. That means either we were starting the wrong guy, or Alec Burks should have more obviously taken it, or we just didn't have enough players, and Alec Burks is a good sixth man, and Richard Jefferson was your guy there. I don't know, but I thought that was surprising that RJ, 40% three-point shooting, came in at 315 and down from the year before when he was really a cast-off in Golden State at 306. So that surprised me a bit. In that NBA rank, I think the next name we'll see is Dante Exum, but maybe it's Trevor Booker. Then we get into Cantor, Burks, Favors, and Hayward before we're done. So that's the latest on the NBA rank. We're kind of checking that each and every day here on the program for you. Here's the ESPN fantasy projections, and I'm going to have to call my good friend Kevin Pelton at some point on this, because it's really a little bit of a mystery to me on how this is possible. Let me bring it up for those of you that are watching this on the YouTube version of the program. I'll bring it up for you for a screen share. And the rest of you that are on audio, listening on iTunes or on Stitcher, or however it might be, I will try to make sure that we make some sense out. ESPN has begun to put out their fantasy projections for this season for you. And I'm sure there's methodology to this. So in the case of Derek Favors, who last year averaged 13 points and 9 rebounds a game, 8.7, playing 30 minutes and shooting 52%, their projection is he'll play fewer minutes, 27. Can't imagine that to be true. Can't imagine. And that therefore he will slip to 12 points and 8 rebounds. I will be stunned if Favors plays under 30 minutes this year. I'm just, so there's my first quibble with this. I don't know if I think he'll change dramatically as an offensive player. He looks really good. His body's bigger. He's worked hard. He's done a lot of neat things to his game, just trying to develop. And his body really, when I've seen him at camp, looks like a 2-year work in progress. Like if I would take an artist and you see him a year in, halfway into a project, you're like, oh, that looks good, but you can't tell what it is. And then the next time, wow, it's really defined. That's where he is. Here's Hayward. They have him going from 36 to 34 minutes. Gordon's our best player. I can't imagine he's playing fewer minutes this year. They do have him increasing his shooting from 41 to 42%. I don't know what they have him on 3. He's going to shoot 37% on 3. I think if you were watching the tip-off earlier this year, there was a study done about what's the number of threes, which actually becomes a significant sample size. So if you really think about this from a statistical standpoint, the three-point shooting year in and year out has huge variation, really variable, because most guys aren't taking enough to have an adequate sample size to really get to their true ability. So in the case of Gordon, he's at 700 for his career attempts, and that turned out to be the study's exact number of when you really have a true number of what you are, that the first half of your second half of your threes will actually meld, saying, okay, now you're at a number that seems legitimate. He was at 37%. I think that's what he'll end up shooting this year. They have him scoring a little less because they have him playing less, being a little bit more efficient, but both his rebounds and assists down. I don't think he'll go up a great deal. I think he's 16, 5, and 5 is pretty darn good. He's playing 36 minutes. I just think he'll shoot a little better. If he shoots a lot better, he's suddenly at 18. Furthermore, our pace of play is going to increase, and our players offensively, while we could be a mess at times, we'll talk about that with some of the comments Dennis said, I do think that we will have better opportunities offensively for these guys by playing quicker and in different parts of the shot clock. We used more possessions in the final 12 seconds of the shot clock last year than any team in the NBA. And I said it when it was going on. That's just not a way to work. Whatever the projection system has, Trey Burke is the exact same player as he was a year ago, just making a few more threes. It actually, it's interesting. It doesn't quite add up. Clearly, they just project a rookie to be the same, except for the fact they have him making more threes, not changing his shooting percentage, and not averaging any more points, which to me goes to the free throw line less, which if that's the case would be catastrophic. Alec Burks, they have regressing from 28 to 24 minutes. Not a possibility. He's going to start this year, and at least initially, and will probably play close to 30 minutes a night. So this just doesn't add up at all. If Trey and Alec both play 30 minutes a night, by the way, it's worth noting that there's only 36 minutes to be played by anybody else at the 1 or the 2. They have him going from 14 points to 12 points a game, and I don't see that. I think he averaged 14 last year. Gordon was 16. I think there's a legitimate argument to be said that Alec could be our leading scorer this year. Alec's going to have to figure out how to play inside of a system and play inside of concepts, though. There was an interesting moment where I don't know if I want to get into that, but I just think that you just understand. Alec does things, but he's got to do it inside the way. Every action that Quinn has in his offense has a counteraction, or if you do this, it causes this. So if he doesn't do the right thing at the right place, then it means there's suddenly a question mark of what happens next in the process. And I think that's the guys have to know what's happening. I think we talked about this week. And this Canada, they have another one going down from 12 points to 10 points a game. Now, some of that I think there's going to be some nights where Ennis has 15 minutes a night. With Rudy Gobert's development, with Trevor Booker on the team, with Steve Novak on the team, with Derek being a staple, I think there's going to be nights where if Ennis just is not engaged and not engaged, he's going to play 12, 13, 14 minutes a night. And it's going to be a real, issue for Ennis to be able to be ready to go every night with every matchup and be able to handle it and Ennis is going to have to be good enough so that you can take advantage of the matchup. I go back to, and this has turned out, Matt Bonner's a half decent defensive player. So it doesn't quite match. But there was a game in the sand back a while where Paul Millsap couldn't beat Matt Bonner in the post, and Ennis has got to be, and it just caused offensive problems. And you've got to find ways for Ennis to be able to, if he's going to have bad matchups defensively, he's got to be able to abuse those guys offensively. And there's going to be nights where he can't do it, and on those nights his numbers are going to go way down. Steve Novak comes in. Actually, they project Novak to get a bunch more time, 15 minutes a game, 5 points, hit a 3 a game. Trevor Booker, they put exactly at where he was a year ago, 21 minutes a game, shooting 54%, 6 points, 5 rebounds a game. I think that's probably right, but there's going to be some nights where Trevor Booker plays 28, and there's probably going to be some nights where Trevor Booker plays 12. This is where I think they really have missed on their projections, is they have Jeremy Evans playing 15 minutes a night, and I don't see that. And I think that's where you can start to look at some of these numbers and they don't add up, is take 15 minutes off of Jeremy Evans. I think he'll be a fringe rotation player who plays with injuries. I don't think he'll be a regular player. But Rudy Gobert they have projected as not playing. So there's really a lot of flaws in this. The only other positive thing is they let us know that Ian Clark's middle name is Patrick because they have him in as Ian Patrick Clark. So it was a great link. It was nice to see. It's interesting to me how just, I guess, whatever the whatever the computer model is that they're using to try to create these things doesn't really correspond to anything that I expect to see with the Utah Jazz in this upcoming season. Dennis Lindsay did an interview this week. I thought there were some things worth mentioning. First off, a phrase I think we're going to have to get very used to hearing. Connected effort on defense. Connecting our defensive effort. I think that is going to become a phrase that we get is pounded into us. I think that's Quinn's kind of mantra that he has for these guys, so expect to hear that. Memo, I don't know if that was on Friday. I didn't talk. If it was on Thursday, I didn't talk about it. But Memo hired as a consultant. Obviously, it's for Ennis, but I think we're cutting it short. I think he's just, he's just a fabulous guy representing the organization. Two, it's important that we start to re-engage players. I think I did mention this the other day. It's not as though Carlos and Darren from that era are going to come back. So I think that memo becomes very important for that era to have that connection. And I do think there is some time he can spend with coaches if he cares to. But I don't, and I think he wants to coach. But I also don't think it's natural that it's just Ennis that he works with. I think we're almost too simplistic in that. Let's just let it work and evolve. And sometimes you bring these guys in and they work with the guys and they're really into it for a week or two and they get back to their regular life and then you never hear from them again. Other times they find themselves really engaging in it and they're on call and they're available all the time and you see that they have a history as a coach. So I think that we're going to wait and see how Memo deals with it. A lot of times what you have, frankly, is somebody who's bored because they've been used to playing and they want to get engaged with something and they're just trying to find out, and over time they find out it either works or it doesn't work for them. Memo's so versatile, so bright, has so many things on his plate, but he wants to stay connected to the organization. The organization loves him and he's worthy of that. Interesting comments from Dennis Lindsay as well in his interview about one of the most unique experience. I'm quoting Dennis here. And I want to thank Lion and Dying with the Jazz, I think it is, who does these, who does the fabulous job of taking these and transcribing them. One of the most unique experiences that Quinn had was really with Ettore Messina in Moscow and the EuroLeague. And you're talking about beautiful basketball, and basketball will be playing a different way. And so that experience, really just visiting with Quinn through the interview process all the way till now, has really branded him. And I think will we will, and he will, bring some unique ideas and perspective to what we're doing, especially with our young team. So clear that European influence of Messina has had that impact on Quinn and the way they want to play, playing with the pass, moving the ball. Spacing is everything to Quinn. Spacing all the time with Quinn. The other thing I thought was interesting was Dennis then talked about Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta, where Quinn was last year, and said they ran beautiful offense last year. The ball really moved. So we're beginning to hear kind of what the core components of what Quinn's going to be. And then there was the caveat at the end of the interview. We want what we call our flow offense. It'll take a while for that to take hold. And there'll be some ugly moments in the first quarter of the year because we're teaching guys how to play a little differently than a typical NBA team, and the ball's going to move. There's a lot of coordination that comes along with that and the teaching concepts, but I'm very confident once that process takes hold, the community will really relate to how we're playing. And I think that's true. If you look at our schedule early, whether it's that Monday early game, there's going to be some ugly nights. And you look the Monday night going into see the Clippers on our fourth game of the year, or the game in Indiana on a back-to-back, if Indiana gets into us physically and kind of blocks some of our routes as they do, and particularly as they're going to have to do without Lance Stevenson, without Paul George, I think we could have some really ugly, high-turnover, low-shooting nights where guys break out of it and try to play one-on-one, and we're not good at that. And so I think that's the process we're going to have this year, and that you're likely going to see. All right, to all NBA news here for a second at the by the way, for those of you listening, on the YouTube or on the Google Plus, if you're watching the video, there's some new thing on the bottom where you can say when you like things, or how does that work? What is that? Does it help you? Is it something I should tell people to do that would make your experience better so that when you're watching you know where to listen? Somebody send me an email. Let me know from a viewer experience what I can do to help you with that. And how it would either benefit us or benefit you in some capacity. I'd like you just to push the up button all the time. Just do-do-do-do-do, but I don't know how it works. All right, so there's a report out there. Let's walk through this one together. There's a report out there that the Minnesota Timberwolves have offered Eric Bledsoe a 4-year, $63 million deal. But there's all sorts of problems with this report. One, they don't have the money. They don't have cap room. They don't have that to put into the cap. Okay? So then you have to say to yourself, the second part is, if they don't have it, then it has to be a sign-and trade. Why would Phoenix do this sign-and trade, and who would they do the sign-and trade for? Okay? So Rubio or Pekovic would seem to be the players you would want if you want Minnesota. I doubt you're going to be able to compile enough money in 12 at $15 million a year. $15 million a year for Eric Bledsoe? That's as crazy as $15 million a year for Gordon Hayward. $15 million a year of Zach LaVine and Shabazz Muhammad is not getting this done. So where is this any possibility that Phoenix has anything they would do with this? The next question is, first of all, what does this do with Minnesota and Rubio, who's a free agent at the end of the year? What message are they sending to him right now? If they're really doing this, do they think they can play Rubio and Bledsoe together? None of this adds up. From a Suns perspective, would they want Rubio? Well, they have Goran Dragic, who they're going to probably sign in the offseason. They acquired Isaiah Thomas. They drafted Tyler Ennis. They're about to sign Zoran Dragic, the shooting guard brother of Goran Dragic, so that you can have Dragic, Morris all on the floor at the same time, and my head will explode. Something doesn't line up here. Until you realize that one of Bledsoe's agents, or one of the agents in Bledsoe's, the firm that is suddenly screwed this whole thing up, used to represent Flip Saunders, the general manager and head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the only, and I don't know this for a fact, but the only thing that makes sense, is it possible that the agent called in a favor from Minnesota to help finally get some deal done with Phoenix for Bledsoe so he doesn't have to take the qualifying offer and leave $48 million on the table to take a $2.7 million qualifier. You can't do that. If you're Eric Bledsoe, you cannot take the qualifier and leave $48 million on the table when you played 43 games last year because you got hurt and got hurt the year before. You cannot do it. So this is your last-ditch effort to try to up that $48 million to something else. Somebody must have promised Bledsoe he was getting the max and screwed up. And don't ever underestimate the situation of the agent in these negotiations. This is, and I talk about it all the time, I usually talk about our guys, and so people think I'm picking on our agents. I don't think people care about agents. But so this is a new agent in a new firm, in LeBron's firm, for Bledsoe, and he doesn't want to undersell the market on Bledsoe and wants to show the other clients we can get. Now he's screwed it up. And so the impediment to getting a deal done, I can't imagine Bledsoe won't take 4 years, 48, is that the agent wants to make sure that his portfolio is right. Sometimes you got to look at it from an agent's perspective. For example, I like Ennis's agent a great deal, but this deal for him is really important. He might have done the Omer Ashik deal. I'm not sure if he has Omer Ashik, but I don't think he does. But this is an important deal for Ennis's agent, not just Ennis. It makes it very difficult to get a deal done by the end of the month. I can't remember who Alec is represented by, but it's, you just have to, frankly, Hayward's deal, and the agent was dead right. Bartelstein has had a little bit of a hard time getting clients recently. My guess is if you look at Bartelstein's clients, he's not paying. And a lot of other agents are paying guys at some point along the way. It's how the business works. Bartelstein had Andy Miller left his firm. There was a bunch of garbage inside the agent world, and he didn't have a lot of clients. He had a good year this year with his draft, but that Hayward deal was really important to him. I mean, now he can go out and sell clients. Well, I got Gordon Hayward the max. Well, now he's really appealing. If I'm a prospect and I'm like, you got Gordon Hayward the max? Yeah, we do things the right way, and we got Gordon Hayward the max. Oh, okay. Well, that's impressive. Mark Bartelstein's been one of the more straight up better agents in the game for a long time. But if he's a straight up better agent in the game, he's not getting his guys money. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you're straight up. I'm glad you're good. I'm glad you're a nice guy. I'm glad you're doing things right. But I'm going to go over here. But now he can say I'm a straight up good guy and I got my client. That's a big deal. That gets you. Watch Bartelstein's client list can prove. Probably to the point where now Bartelstein chooses. Do I want to play the dirty game? Nope. I'll just take this guy who's not dirty. Watch it. His client list will improve. So that's a little bit of what's going on with Bledsoe. It's what's going to go on with every negotiation. Don't ever forget the agent's involvement on it. So we'll see. Final thing, Gary Payton is working with Giannis Antetokounmpo. He said, Jason let me see Giannis personally. I talked with him after some of the Summer League games. Jason put him at point guard in the Summer League, and he did very well at point guard. I'm going to go down there for a preseason and training camp and work with him a little bit on his point guard skills. Being 6'10 or 6'11, he has great skills to play basketball. I think he's going to be very successful if he gets point guard skills. He's very talented. He's a young kid. He's raw. He needs work on things. Last year he was in Milwaukee. He was hurt a little bit and didn't get to play as much. With a coach coming in like Jason, who's a point guard, who also I think is going to be very good, but he just needs a little guidance. There's a young basketball team. They don't have many veterans that can teach him things, so he needs someone like myself or Jason to teach him the skills. So Gary Payton going to Milwaukee, where he did spend some time. He got traded in the Ray Allen deal from Seattle to Milwaukee to work with Giannis Antetokounmpo. All right, let's go to your questions. From Corey, this might be premature, but do you get a sense that the team chemistry is improving now that there's some long-term stability on the roster? Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, sure. No, it's totally premature. Do I think that Gordon and Derek can jump forward and figure out if they're capable of taking control of this locker room? Yes, I think that, if that's what you're kind of going at. But otherwise, yes, I think your question was premature. There's a story, I've told this before, there's a story, I might be dead wrong on this and making this up a little bit, but there's a story about the fact that Gordon did something in the locker room early last year that's been relayed to me through various sources during the season last year that was really impressive leadership-wise. It was very good, but then he didn't play well, and you can't lead if you don't play well. And so, there's only so much you can be on guys or taking the blame yourself if you can't do it every night. So it all really depends on whether you play well or not. And I think that's the difficulty in that whole leadership concept. But Gordon's got to be better than he was last year at kind of staying bought in, not blaming others, and being a leader with his actions. And, I think with having Marvin and Richard and Ty talking about Marvin and Richard's leadership all the time, it just gave a blank slate to Derek and Gordon that they didn't have to. Now they don't have a choice. So it's Quinn's team, it's Quinn's leadership, but those two guys have got to show the ability to play every night and to deal with tough situations better than maybe they did in the past along the way. Let me check and see. Sometimes people leave questions on tip-off front page. Josh Clark's having problems. Other people are having problems. I didn't know people are having problems with the Google Hangout. Email me. Let me know what your problems are so I can see if I can send it to Google and figure it out. That wraps up the show today. Thanks so very much for tuning in. Have a good day and be safe.